Hi, this is Chapter 7 and 8 test review video. So, any scientific test can be challenged based on faulty test equipment. A chain of custody has to be established for each evidence item, and a proper foundation must be laid for any real or physical evidence to be entered into court. To use latent prints at trial, the prosecutor needs to call the person who recovered the prints and the person who identified them, and that would be for any scientific evidence. Let's see here. And for experiments, they must be conducted under the same conditions as the crime scene. Real evidence is physical items, documents, digital pictures, anything that's physical evidence. At trial, the first step in laying the foundation for the introduction of a gun, as an example, is to have someone identify the gun being introduced at trial and testify as to where it was found. That would be the first step for laying the foundation. When collecting evidence at crime scenes, the test that is likely to be run on each item should be considered so the item can be preserved appropriately. If there's a question about the admissibility of a new type of scientific test at trial, the judge will have a voir dire hearing for the expert. Let's see here. The advantage of fingerprints compared to DNA is processing fingerprints is faster, it's less expensive, and there's a larger database right now for fingerprints than DNA. The definition of a document used in evidence includes materials containing words and symbols as well as those that contain visual or audio information. All types of documentary evidence must be authenticated before being admitted into evidence. A document is authenticated by establishing that all the facts stated in the document are true and accurate. All documents, the penal code officially published by each state, but not those printed by private publishers, is a self-authenticated document. That's just an example. If a lay witness authenticates a handwritten document, the opposing side will not be allowed to call a forensic document examiner to establish that it's a forgery. That's false. The opposing side could call a document examiner. The original is the document itself, and any copies the person making the document intended to have the same effect as the original. So if original is not available, then copies can be introduced as evidence. Primary evidence is the term used when introducing documents at trial, and that means it's the original document. Testimony of it could be a duplicate, though, if an original is not available. The testimony of a person who was present when a document was prepared would be admissible at trial if the document was destroyed by accident. So the person could give testimony to it. That's a stupid question. Let's see here. The following are accepted ways of authenticating a document at trial: the testimony of a forensic document examiner, the testimony of a person who observed the document being signed, the testimony of a clerk who typed the document. Any of those could be used to authenticate a document. A layperson can take the witness stand and testify the handwriting on a document only if the witness is familiar with the handwriting of the person in question. When a computer was used by a suspect to commit a crime, a forensic documentation of the computer can show files that were deleted from the computer. When introducing documents at trial, secondary evidence is testimony introduced when documents are not available. Parole, P-A-R-O-L, evidence about the content of a document is testimony introduced when no documents are available. And that is the end of the test review for Chapters 7 and 8.